Burt Lancaster hated Lee Marvin very much. We now understand why. When I was 23, I saw something that would forever change how I thought about being a man. In Death Valley, California, on Christmas Eve 1965. Finally, the temperature dropped to a nice 38 degrees Celsius. Most of the crew had gone inside to write letters or call their wives and lovers on the one payphone, which only worked sometimes because it was so hot. But there were still 2 guys left, 2 of Hollywood's biggest stars, and they were about to have a fight that would end their professional relationship for good. I helped with the cameras on a Western show called The Professionals. My job was easy. Load film magazines, don't show up, and don't say anything. But that night, it became impossible to stay unseen. I saw something that wasn't about what you think. It wasn't about drinking, though there was a lot of that. There was nothing formal about it, even though that's what the story would say. This wasn't even about pride, even though both guys had a lot of it. It had to do with something much worse. Something that gets to the heart of what American men, especially men of a certain age, have been trying to show their whole lives. Are you the real deal, or are you just an act? This story will stick with you because of this. The person who asked that question was right. Burt Lancaster, Hollywood's most disciplined actor, would have to face the one truth he'd been avoiding for 50 years by the end of the night. Lee Marvin, a decorated war warrior, would explain why being real can be its own kind of prison. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Before you can understand what went off that Christmas Eve, you need to know who these men were. Not the movie stars, but the men who put on the show. And I promise it wasn't who you think it was. Act 1 is about Burt Lancaster, the self-made fighter. How well strength works. I'm going to talk about Burt Lancaster. November 2nd, 1913. Born in New York's East Harlem. His dad worked for the post office. The family didn't have much money. Not completely broke, but poor enough that Burt and Stephen Lancaster knew early on that nothing would be given to him. The area was rough. You didn't make it if you couldn't fight. Lancaster found something more important, though, than his fists. His body was strong enough to do things that other bodies couldn't. But he could flip, fall, and fly through the air like gravity wasn't a rule. Think of Lancaster as a person who is putting together a church. One stone at a time. It was just that the church was him. And every stone was put in place with such accuracy and control that by the time he got to Hollywood, it looked like it could not be broken. The year 1965, he was 52 years old and did more than just act. He broke the rules of the studio system by starting his own production company. He was a major player in business and in the entertainment industry. In a time when actors were used as studio property, Lancaster had said it was independent. His workout routine was famous and a little crazy. 5 a.m. Getting up early, running in the hot desert, and doing calisthenics that would make guys half his age tired. He didn't smoke or drink while the movie was being made, and he stuck to the script of self-perfection he had written for himself. He was being watched by the pros, who were both amazed and uneasy. This man treated his body like a weapon that needed to be fixed all the time. Who knew his lines by heart so well that he could say them backwards, and who got to the set exactly on time, not early or late. Because being exact was very important. Hollywood was a crazy place where excess and chaos were normal, so Lancaster stood out. In the church, he was the Puritan, and in the gambling, he was the monk. Like everyone else who builds themselves up through sheer willpower, he had a slight but clear dislike for people who didn't. The crew didn't know this, though. What Lancaster himself might not have said in full. What did all that power make up for? It will be brought up, but first you need to meet the man who will do it. Lee Marvin, the real ruin. Lee Marvin was not at all like Burt Lancaster. That's exactly what was wrong. Born in New York on February 19, 1924, 11 years before Lancaster. But when it came to real, bone-deep experience, he might as well have been from another world. Lee Marvin joined the Marines when he was 18 years old, in 1942. He did it not because he was very loyal or because he had no other choice, but because he wanted to test himself. This is very important. In June 1944, he learned on Saipan. A lot of people died in the Battle of Saipan, which was fought in the Pacific. The fighters from Japan knew they were going to die, so they tried to get as many Americans as they could to stay alive. It was made at Lee Marvin. A sniper's bullet hit him in the back and down the back of his leg. He was in military hospitals for 13 months. The Purple Heart was given to him. He always walked a little funny, but the scars that you could see were nothing compared to the ones that you couldn't. Marvin was like a cathedral that was bombed out but still stands. Lancaster was like a cathedral that was built stone by stone. It was easy to see where the walls had broken and the base had moved. The building was still there, but anyone with eyes could see. This man had been through fire, and fire changes people. Thank you. In 1965, Marvin had just won an Oscar for Cat Bellaloo. He was Hollywood's new idea of cool, risky, unexpected, and real. People believed him when he played tough guys because it wasn't acting, it was recognition. Lee Marvin didn't mind that he was drinking. It was a way out. When you've seen 19-year-olds yelling for their moms. When you've killed guys and dreamed about their faces for 20 years. Whiskey isn't a way to relax. It's medicine. Fully self-prescribed, self-administered, and medicine even though it doesn't work. He was professional in his own way on set. He would sometimes be late. He sometimes forgot his words. He would get drunk a lot. Something did happen, though, when the camera rolled. It was the chaos that turned into pure presence or truth. The team split up into groups. There is Team Lancaster versus Team Marvin, Team Control versus Team Chaos, and Team Success versus Team Authenticity. The two men in the middle and everyone else still didn't get it. Both teams were wrong. It wasn't a battle between order and chaos. Two men were stuck because they had different ideas about what power meant to them. And Death Valley was about to become the place where these different meanings would meet. What happens when you put two alpha men in 120 degrees heat for 3 months? One is shaped by discipline, and the other by trauma. The show is over, and now the truth starts to come out. Act 2 is the build-up and the first crack. The trouble began in October, during the first week of main filming. The place was terrible. Death Valley lived up to its name. The production really picked it because the story was set in Mexico in the summer, a place where heat wasn't just the weather. 4 men in that role, getting angry was like the sun beating down on red rock and endless sand. The Lancasters showed up with a truck. Not your own car. A truck full of weights, parallel bars, and a movable gym that he put together in his hotel room. Lancaster did handstand push-ups against the wall of his room while the other players checked out the local bar scene. Marvin showed up with more than one bag at 52 in Death Valley, so his shoulders wouldn't lose their shape during the 3-month shoot. The crew made fun of the fact that there were 3 places for bottles and 1 for clothes. It was pretty close to the truth. Director Richard Brooks called the table red the first morning. Lancaster got there 15 minutes early with 3 different colored pens marked up on his script. Marvin was 20 minutes late and had his script folded up in his back pocket. He also looked like he had a big hangover. I remember this event very well. Lancaster looked at Marvin with a face I wasn't sure what it meant. It wasn't anger. It was more like testing, like when a mathematician comes across an equation that doesn't make sense but still gives right answers. It was fine to read through. Marvin, even though he seemed to be only partly aware, he said his lines in a way that made Lancaster's more studied delivery seem almost theatrical. I heard Lancaster talking to Brooks after they were done. Is this how he's going to act every day? Brooks just smiled because he had worked with both bad and good players. It's Lee, but wait until you see what he does now. Lancaster didn't seem to be sure. The Edge. 3 weeks in Nevada's Valley of Fire State Park. We moved to get to certain rock structures, dramatic red cliffs that looked like hell and Mars had a baby. For the scene, Lancaster and Marvin had to climb up a cliff face while being shot at, find cover, and fire back. Action routines that required accuracy, timing, and most of all, sobriety. November 12, 1965. Call time at 6 a.m. At dawn, it was already 32 degrees and rising. Lancaster got there at 5:45 already dressed and ready to go.